Okay, I think we all know by now that I love my tech, but I know I'm not alone, so today I thought I'd share my favourite tech from 2019. Alright, this has been a tough one to whittle down, but I've picked out my favourite tech and more notable tech of the year. And if you do like anything you see during this video, make sure you hit that thumbs up. But given that we are triathletes, let's start with the swim, which is a discipline that I guess has been left behind somewhat in terms of technological advances, particularly when you compare it to cycling and running, the amount of data that we can capture from them. Swimming can seem rather basic in comparison, but there are a few brands out there that are changing this, and one of which is Flex. Earlier this year, they released a tracker that attaches to your current goggles and buzzes to tell you which zone you're in by reading your heart rate through the device. And also quite a nice thing is that it actually has LEDs on the side to also indicate to your coach which zone you're in. But the bit that really blew my mind was actually with its post-session analysis. Now, we were fortunate enough to have Jazz Carling, the ex-international swimmer, pop by GTN and actually show us some of her data that she captured from some of her swims previously. And without telling the device what she had planned on doing, it had worked out which bit was her warm-up, which bit was her main set, which bit was the warm-down. It had broken it down into the reps. But the bit that was absolutely mind-blowing was the fact that it had worked out which stroke she had been swimming on, which is really impressive for such a small device to figure out those things. So yeah, very cool bit of tech. But the next bit of swimmy tech that I've really enjoyed this year is from Form. Okay, I've banged on about these a fair bit this year, but just check them out. It's all the data that you'll need within the lens of your goggle. And if that doesn't make you feel futuristic, I don't know what will. But I'll just recap if you haven't heard me talk about them already. It's an augmented reality display within the lens of your goggle. So it'll be displaying your pace, your distance, your laps, your stroke rate, even your heart rate. So all the data that you'll need. And if you like, you can actually program sessions into it so you can follow them within the lens of your goggle. It'll tell you how many reps you've got left, how much recovery you've got, the time for those reps, and so on. Again, really fancy stuff. But one bit of tech that has managed to slip by me this year, but I'm going to feature it now anyway, it's called Gnome and it's from Trinsic Sports. And it's essentially a really fancy pace clock made out of LEDs that goes along the bottom of the swimming pool. Now, without actually seeing this device in person, from what I can work out, you actually place this device on the wall at the end of the pool. And it's a little bit like a reel of hose, except the reel on this device is a strip of LEDs. So then you pull out that strip of LEDs and you submerge that on the bottom of the pool from one end of the lane to the other. And then on the device itself, you can set the pace to whatever pace you're hoping to swim at or desired pace, and those LEDs will illuminate at that set pace, which is a little bit like when you're watching the swimming on TV and you see that world record pace line in front of the swimmers, except for this, it's actually for real. The swimmer can actually see those lights illuminate and that pace. Now, I've had a little search around on the Gnome websites and trying to find out a little bit more about them. And it actually sounds like this portable device is just the start for them. What they're really hoping is that swimming pools are going to actually reconsider the original design of the pools when they're either renovating them or making a pool from scratch, and hoping that they'll include these LED strips when they do that. Now, that's probably enough of swimming for now, but now let's move on to the cycling. And I'm going to start with this Saris plate that I saw out in Kona. Right, so here at the Saris stand, this is their, well, soon to be released MP1 Infinity plate. Now, this is another attempt to make indoor cycling that a little bit more real. So this plate actually has lateral movement, so that's on a leaf spring. We've got 6 degrees either side. We've also got some rollers, so we've got 4.5 movement here. But essentially, the big thing here is when we get up out of the saddle, or if we're sprinting, we can just ride like we are on the road. Yeah, I think this is a really cool move given the growth and popularity of indoor training at the moment. There's a lot being invested into this market, so the more real we can make it, the better. And with people like Zwift introducing things like steering into their indoor training, and then this, it's getting that bit closer to feeling like riding outdoors, or at least it's a lot different from the old dumb trainers that a lot of us used to train on. Okay, my next bit of tech is one that is fairly close to my heart. It's the old Canyon Speed Max. So I guess it's no secret, I've got a lot of love for that bike, But unfortunately, I do not have the most up-to-date cockpit on my own personal Canyon Speedmax. But fortunately, Fraser got to have a look firsthand at the newest one out in Oceanside earlier this year.
They've cleaned up aerodynamically how it looks from the front end. So whereas before in previous models they had tower stacks here for the arm cups, they've taken them away, moved them in line so that they're now sitting above the aero bars, which just means that this thing is even more aerodynamic and faster than it was.
Yeah, that is some slippery looking stuff and such clever design and integration. But whilst we're talking about aerodynamics, how about this one? Again from Fraser, but this time out at Challenge Rot.
Right, so we're at the Swiss side booth now, and this is some very exciting kit that we've got here. This is F1 Formula 1 technology brought over to cycling, and this here is Swiss side's pressure measurement rake, as they call it. So as you can see, it sits here on the back of the seat tube behind the rider when they're riding out on the real world. And the whole point of this is that rider can go into the wind tunnel and get measurements registered in there in the wind tunnel.
Okay, it's not our usual piece of mass-produced tech. In fact, I'm fairly sure there's only a couple of those that exist. But one that you can buy and also came out earlier this year is SRAM Access. Yeah, love it or hate it, it's hard to look past it. Now, reinventing the wheel may be a slight overstatement here, but it's certainly on its way to doing that. For starters, it's a 12-speed setup, which again isn't necessarily anything game-changing, but what is its gear ratios. Now, they've managed to develop and design a new free hub body. They've taken the design from their off-road XD driver and they've managed to now put a smaller 10-tooth sprocket onto this new free hub body. And what that does is actually increases the range ever so slightly on both the easier end and the harder end of the gears. But to do this, they've had to make the chain ever so slightly thinner to accommodate these 12 sprockets. And by doing that, they want to make sure that they still maintain the strength of the chain. So they've actually added material to the top of the chain, which has brought about this rather cool looking and eye-catching flat top design to this chain. Now, moving back to bikes, and a bike that you may well have forgotten about given its release back in March of this year, this Cervelo P5 disc. Now, the P5 was already a very popular bike amongst athletes, so it's no surprise to see quite a lot of these newer bikes, the P5 disc, at a lot of races this year. And fortunately, we got a first-hand look at it very early on this year at the championship with David McNamee's bike. Now, it's been actually 7 years since the release of the P5, and Cervelo have completely overhauled its design, obviously most notably with the hydraulic disc brakes, but they've also made a number of other changes which we'll go through in more detail later in this video. They've improved the stiffness in the front end by 22%, 26% increased stiffness in the bottom bracket, and they've also improved the lightness of this frame by 18%, and in fact, they've actually saved 350 grams in the frame set alone on its previous model. Okay, quickly, one more bit of bike tech before we move on to the run. And how about the Rotor InSpider power meter that I saw out in Kona? It's a rather clever bit of design. So here is the power meter, the chain rings, the spider, here is the axle. We can slot it in, as so, and then you can swap out the crank, so you can go for whatever size you like, which is quite convenient for triathletes who maybe trying out different size crank lengths, and this just slot on like that. So it is actually a single-sided power meter, but obviously you can replicate that power onto the other side so we get overall power for both legs. The nice thing with this is also is compatible with 1x and 2x. And in addition to that, the power meter actually auto-calibrates as you go. It's got a built-in thermometer and also detects changes in barometric pressure. So as you're riding along, the temperature changes, or you change altitude as you're riding, it will auto-calibrate for you as you go. Now, moving on from cycling and on to running, and it would be foolish to ignore the insurgence of carbon plates. Now, this technology isn't anything new, but Nike have really stamped their mark here with a well-developed and performing shoe. Now, it's a couple of years ago since they first released their shoe with a carbon plating, but this year they released their newest iteration, the Nike ZoomX Vaporfly Next Percent, which we've seen a lot of athletes using and triathletes using, particularly so at Kona, a heck of a lot of them using it. But we also had Kipchoge wearing his rather fancy shoe in his sub 2 hour attempt. While other brands are following in their stride, such as Hoka with their rather popular Carbon X shoe, And we've also seen a number of prototypes from certain other brands who are doing a similar thing. But moving on from that, and now onto that rather funny looking Omius headband, which we've seen quite a few athletes wearing this past year or so. Now, if we were just to pour a little bit of water onto the back of these pads, this special compound here, which you can see raises out of the headband, increases the skin surface area by 5 times. So when we whack this on our head, it's already really quite cold. If we were to run along the wind passing through this compound, it should really feel quite cold, which is obviously really important for somewhere like here in Kona with the heat and the humidity that the athletes are going to experience on race day. Yeah, they were certainly popular with the pros this year in Kona, including their wrist-based ones with the same technology built into them. Now moving on to another product that's really jumped up this year, the AMP Human Performance Substance. Let me explain. Now essentially this is bicarbonate soda. Okay, sounds pretty odd, baking soda. A lot of athletes have actually used this to help buffer lactic acid, to reduce the effects of lactic acid when you're training. I used to use this actually with British Triathlon, but it does have side effects. It can affect your gut and also it just tastes disgusting to digest. So they have cleverly managed to put this into a formula that tricks the skin into absorbing it. So in here we've actually got a fatty substance that the skin accepts that fatty substance, and within that is encapsulated the bicarb. That soaks into the skin, is absorbed into the body, into the muscles, into the bloodstream, and has the same effects. Clever stuff, eh? Right, well, as you can imagine, it's been pretty tricky whittling it down to just that many bits of tech that have been released this year. We featured so much tech on GTN over the past year, so do make sure you have a look through some of our previous videos. But if we have missed anything this year, then please do let us know in the comments section below. I've actually whittled this list down further to a short list of just 4 bits of tech. So I've got the Nike Vaporfly Next Percent shoes, I've got the SRAM Axis group set, the Form goggles, and the Cervelo P5 disc. And you can enter into the poll just above and let us know which one you think is the best bit of tech to be released this year. If you've enjoyed today's video, hit that thumbs up button. If you'd like to see more videos from GTN, you can just click on the globe and subscribe. If you'd like to see our tech from Kona, you can see the video just here. If you'd like to see our best triathlon upgrades or value upgrades, you can see that by clicking just down here.